Today, I'm stoked to share some tips and tricks that I learned on the road to make the Move Shoot Move Star Tracker even easier to use and more reliable, as well as some test results on a brand new 1 terabyte CF-Express B card that's actually reasonably priced. Well, hey everyone, Hudson here. Welcome to this week's video. Some really fun stuff to share with you after a month out photographing with amazing groups of photographers in Yellowstone, the Tetons, and the Owens Valley, sort of southeastern Sierras on the eastern side. And we did some really great Milky Way work there as a workshop about a month ago in the Owens Valley. We had beautiful nights for it and learned a fair number of things that can really aid using the Move Shoot Move Star Tracker. So I'll share that in a minute. I'm kind of getting settled back in here into the studio. I'm excited to share a bunch of the stuff that I've learned on the road. You know, whenever we teach these workshops, Rick LePage and I, David Archer, CJ Glenn, we always learn as much as we share, I think, and it's fun to come back and sort of schedule out some things to share with you that have been learned along the way on the road. I'm also checking out Nikon Z30. B&H got me a review sample. I just plugged the battery into charge. I don't know that it's going to be a camera that I'm excited about keeping, but you know, it's a newer body from Nikon. I'm curious about it, so I'll share some thoughts on that in a soon to come video, as well as firmware 3.0 for the Z9. That's a little more exciting. Some cool new stuff in that. I'm honing through that. That just released today as I'm filming this. So I'll be going over that, and I think it's time for an addendum to my Z9 setup videos. So I'll put together a setup video that covers some of the things that have been opened up in firmware, as well as some things I've just learned and refined through using it over these months since that camera was released. So those are some fun things to look forward to. Before we jump in and I go through some tips and tricks for setting up and using the Move Shoot Move Star Tracker and some new things I've learned, I want to talk a little bit about a new large budget Compact Flash Express B card. These Compact Flash Express B cards are different than the old XQD cards that we used in the days of the D850 and the D500. You know, those older cameras, as well as the Z6, Z7, Z6 and 7 IIs, have been updated to accept these much faster cards. They have dual channels or PCI channels. They flow data much quicker. You know, they can go up, their maximum throughput is much higher than any other card on the market. And they seem destined to take over, you know, for the cameras that can shoot really high resolution video and fast bursts of large still frames like the Z9. That's one thing the Z9 harnesses, is the ability to use these faster cards. So some of you might be thinking of moving from kind of the dead-end tech of XQD over to CF-Express B. Some of you might have some smaller CF-Express B cards and would like a bigger one. Pergear sent this out to me. I know they've sent it out to a number of people while I was away on these workshops, and I got home and had a chance to check this out. It's not going to be the card for shooting limitless bursts of fast action. You know, when I threw this in the Z9 and set it to 20 frames per second lossless compressed RAW files, this maxed out just under 3 seconds, 57 frames. As opposed to my #1 recommended card for the Z9 bursts, which is the Pergear Cobalt 650 card. This card, though, costs nearly twice as much for a smaller card as this guy. And in tests, I found that it could shoot any of even the Z9's massive 8K ProRes, you know, video, the 8K RAW and the 8K 10-bit N-Log video. I shot 500 gigabytes nonstop on it without it even heating up or throwing a glitch. So for video shooting, this thing is more than sufficient with anything the Z9 can throw at it, which is saying quite a bit. And for knock-around shooting, landscape, you know, just kind of travel, that kind of thing, this thing is more than sufficient. So what I'm doing is sticking this 1 terabyte card into the second memory slot on my Z9 to back up the 650 gigabyte ProGrade card that's great for those burst action scenes and modes, so that this one's overflow and catches all the video that I shoot. It's a reasonable deal at 399 bucks. You know, it's 400 bucks for a terabyte. Not cheap by any stretch, but a terabyte means you're really not going to be worried about changing out cards, even though you're shooting at that big, high resolution, high megapixel. Even if you wanted to shoot 8K video, which I only shoot 4K, this thing will hold a ton of 4K 10-bit video. You can get it for 20 bucks more with this reader that ProGear makes. Well, I imagine that they're rebranding someone else's, but it's a nice solid metal reader. Seems like it would travel well. I tested it with the ProGrade card in it, my fastest card to sort of test read speeds. And it doesn't get as fast a read speed as this Lexar reader that I recommend. The Lexar reader goes to nearly a gigabyte a second when it's reading cards. And I keep that on my desktop all the time. That's what's recommended in my links page. When you run over and hit my links, those links help me out, and I appreciate you for using them. All this stuff will be in those links page along with linked in this video's full description. But the ProGear and the Manfrotto readers, which I would prefer to take on the road because they're more compact and robust, they top out at about 660 megabytes per second, 658. It was interesting, they both read at exactly the same speed when I tested them out. So it's a cool option for those of you who want a larger card. Again, not the burst shooting dream card out there, but a good solid card. Good job on ProGear for putting it out there at a reasonable price. I know some people are fans of Angelbird's cards. That's another budget card. It's $80 more than this card, and I know numerous people who have problems with those Angelbird cards. Plus, they don't have the kind of full metal build of this card. They feel a little bit more plasticky and cheaper. And I actually have had issues with the Angelbird card, and I just don't recommend them. So there you have it. I think this is a good budget card. I've shot a bunch with it in the Z6 II, shot a bunch with it in the Z9. I've put it into different readers on both Mac and PC, and it's been robust for me. Okay. Enough about CF-Express B cards. Let's jump in and talk about the moveshootmove and some tips and tricks that, maybe I'll demystify a couple things about it at the same time as showing you some cool new things to use with it that can make it just more reliable and even easier to use. The moveshootmove, is, again, this little star tracker. Everything fits in here. It's easy to stick in your camera bag. Rechargeable. You drop it into your head on your tripod, and I prefer, generally, most people know I prefer a fluid head or a pan and tilt head like this Acrotech one that comes with my pan and tilt ultra lightweight tripod system. That's what I'm using right here. I think before you go putting a moveshootmove and your camera up on a tripod, particularly if it's a lighter tripod like this, you want some weight in your stone bag. All this stuff is at my links or at my tripods page. But I've got a nice 20-pound sandbag here in my stone bag right now. You put your moveshootmove onto your pan and tilt head, and that's really nice because what you're going to do with the moveshootmove is attach its laser guider. And I got a killer shot of all of us aligning on Polaris while we were out in the Owens Valley. But you can see what it looks like when a whole group of photographers are all beaming their moveshootmoves into space. I shot this handheld with my Leica. It's a pretty cool shot. But with the pan and tilt head, you can move the tilt until you get at the right elevation for the North Star, and then you can just pan until it's right on the North Star, lock it down. You want to make sure that you're level. There's a nice big bubble level right here in the center of my Acrotech panoramic head. And then you don't move that base tripod at all. The head is now aligned on Polaris. Now comes this cool new thing you might notice that I have sitting right here. This is the Leofoto QS60 quick release adapter. And essentially it's made to be able to swap tripod heads from tripod to tripod, from a set of legs to a set of legs. Leofoto sent me one of these. I love the people that are innovating at Leofoto's tripod section. Not everything that Leofoto makes am I a huge fan of, but their tripods, legs, and accessories for those tripod legs are just awesome. And they sent me one of these, and I thought, wow, that's the coolest, head quick release that I've seen yet, but I don't really use multiple heads. When I've got my fluid head or my panorama head, that's all I really need. I hadn't thought about the moveshootmove application though, and I owe Carl Jarvinen a huge thank you because he actually found this and applied it to the moveshootmove. What's unique about this thing is you just thread it onto the moveshootmove stud, And then there are these 3 little set screws that lock it right down onto the plate. You just literally have these 3 set screws that you use a little Allen wrench, and you dive in there. Don't over torque it. I would never put the Allen wrench on with the short end into the head and torque it, because you're actually putting this onto the turntable of the Move Shoot Move, the part that rotates, and it's got a rubber plate. You just need to put them in there and gently hand tighten them so that it can't rotate off. It won't spin off when you put those 3 little set screws in. And it has a locking mechanism. And then there's this little quick release plate that goes on the bottom of your tripod head. This is an Acrotech Ultimate head. We're about to talk about why it's an Acrotech Ultimate head in just a second. But I've put the tripod stud that comes with the Move Shoot Move into the base of the tripod, and then again there's 3 little set screws. I've actually lost one on mine, but you just torque 2 of them. Is more than sufficient to lock this little guy in place. It spins onto that stud. Here, I'll actually take it off and show you. You just loosen these 2 little set screws to take it off, and off it comes. This little stud comes with the Move Shoot Move. It's basically like the stud that would be coming off the top of your tripod legs. You drop that into whatever ball head you're using atop the Move Shoot Move, and then thread the QS60's little receiver guy on there. And then again, you got these 2 little, well, there's 3, I'm just missing one. I would recommend, if you don't have this in use, stick it in a Ziploc bag so you don't lose the set screws if they come loose. Once they're tightened in, they're not coming loose. But again, 2 of them is more than sufficient to lock this guy in place. And then all you have to do is open your quick release on the Move Shoot Move, align it, and twist that lock. And now all of a sudden, your head is just locked to the Move Shoot Move. It's as simple to take on and off as placing it down, twisting, boom. Now, okay, that seems like, well, that isn't a huge deal. I just don't have to spin the thing on. Except the Move Shoot Move is on this little turntable. And previously, the only way to put your tripod on there was to lock the pan adjustment on your head and then twist it until you overcame this one click of the Move Shoot Move, which is sort of going against its motor and going 1 detent past it. And it's not that tight. The problem being that when you went to put your camera up, let's say you had your camera, we'll go ahead and put our camera on here. I'll lock it in place. Say I've got a big camera like the Z9 and the 14-24, kind of pushing what you want to use the smaller star tracker for. And then I'm going to add my my HB97 filter hood onto there, the 112 filter hood that Nikon makes, and my magnetic neutral night filter. You got a lot of weight up there all of a sudden, and it's a lot of money sitting up here. And if you were to set this thing up with the tripod head just threaded on there and set it over this direction where the weight is pulling this way, you might not have it tight enough to where it doesn't unthread, and whoop, the whole thing flips around and you have this catastrophic flop, because what's happening is your tripod head is threading off the Move Shoot Move. With this piece, you're locked in there solid. It's not going to come unthreaded. Having those set screws on the quick release catch and the quick release plate locks it in place. You can now trust that wherever you set this and lock it in, it's going to stay without flopping. That's a lot of weight. There you go. Okay, so that's tip number 1. You know, tip number 2 is, before you ever do any of this, when you're setting up your tripod, make sure, you know, if you're using a setup like mine where the Arca Swiss clamp is rotatable, you know, whether it's on your fluid head or your panoramic head, you want to make sure that you absolutely have that locked in tight. You know, in this case, I use a little Allen wrench that drops right into the wrench hole. It's designed to do this with the Acrotech clamps. There's a knob underneath here, and you can loosen it like that, and you can tighten it like that. But once you hand tighten it, put that Allen wrench into that little hole in the knob and just lock it down so that it can't rotate. Because if that comes loose, there's a lot of weight sitting up on top of that clamp when you have the Move Shoot Move set up on it. So now, simply, you know, you make sure that you're still level at your leveling adapter. You know, that you can You can just move around, make sure that you're still got that bubble right in the center of your bubble level. Make sure that you're still, when you turn on your laser and you're all pointing your beams into space at night, this looks just like a lightsaber pointed into the night. Make sure that you've set that up to where you're on level with the North Star. You tilt to get the height the same as the North Star. Boom, you're locked in, you're obscuring the North Star looking at it. Now you can just compose to your heart's content. And that's where we get to this other innovation with the Move Shoot Move that is just awesome. And I owe another member of this Approaching the Scene community a big debt of gratitude for figuring this one out. And that's the Acrotech Ultimate Head. You know, I've recommended other ball heads in the past. The reason for a ball head on the Move Shoot Move is that you can't get level underneath. They make these things Z plates and V plates that they sell to try to get your tripod head level. And in my experience, they get rid of the stability. Right now, this thing is nice and stable. If I put one of those V plates or Z plates underneath, the whole thing becomes like a diving board and there's not enough stability to get a nice clean shot of the stars while this is rotating. Instead, I like to just use a ball head, and that way, you know, your ball heads, you can aim wherever you want. What's happening is this whole mechanism is aligned pretty close to the North Star by using this laser, and then this plate is rotating to counteract the Earth's rotation so you don't get star trails, you get nice pinpoint stars. The thing that's cool about the Ultimate Head is that unlike a normal ball head, which when you orient it straight out, it has a wraparound and a notch to be able to get vertical. The Ultimate Head has this 45-degree cut in it. Let me actually take the camera off, show you what I'm talking about. You know, if I take this head off, it's very different than other types of heads. It has this cut where you can literally take the camera beyond vertical if you want. You can move this almost anywhere you want in that area. If I wanted to take the head in another, let's see, I gotta get lined up here. There we go. The difficult thing, you know, here where I am in Oregon, let me explain the problem a little more carefully. This isn't a problem I encounter that much up here in Oregon, because up here in Oregon, we're at 45 degrees latitude, and that means we're gonna be setting this thing up right about where it is right now. This is about 45 degrees. This is the angle I would probably be at shooting towards the North Star. The closer you get to the equator, the lower the North Star appears on the horizon. You know, let's say we're down somewhere where instead of at 45 degrees, we're gonna find our alignment is more like 20 degrees. Well, now all of a sudden, if you don't have this style head, it's difficult to push forward. With the traditional notch, you have to align it right in the notch. And then if you want to turn sideways, the notch is kind of fighting you. You just have a harder time composing. This Ultimate Head is actually cheaper than the prior head I've been recommending, the GXP. And while it may not be as great a ball head for every general purpose, like turning it into a gimbal or doing panoramas with it, it's perfect for the Move Shoot Move. So if you've been kind of holding out on getting that awesome head for the Move Shoot Move, I would look no further than Acrotech's Ultimate Head. It really is the perfect companion to the Move Shoot Move because it just frees you, even at lower latitudes, closer to the equator, to compose in any direction you want. And when you combine it with that QS60 from Leofoto, you're rock solid. You can work with more weight. You don't have to worry about the flop from the tripod. It's a really great combo. And so, you know, Eric Larson recommended the head. Carl Jarvinen figured out the QS60. So I owe those guys both a great debt of gratitude. You know, I just would make sure that every single fitting, when you're working with this kind of setup, is rock solid and tight. That your leveling adapter is tight. Your base is locked in once you're aligned on the North Star. Your clamp is tight. It's locked in tight if it's a rotating clamp. And this QS60 just really, really does tighten up the whole usage of the Move Shoot Move. And you know, a ball head's essential with this. So there you go. We had an amazing time in the Owens Valley shooting the Milky Way. It was so much fun. We shot multiple nights. We had days where there were epic clouds out over the valley, and then nights where it was crystal clear and hardly any light pollution to be able to do blue hour foregrounds with star tracked or star stacked Milky Way capture, depending on what people wanted to learn. We worked with everybody, made sure everybody got at least one great Milky Way shot that they were excited about. And we shot multiple locations for blue hour foregrounds and talked about using our apps on our phones to figure out exactly where the Milky Way would be behind our subjects, and then working on how to do those composites. It was a ton of fun, ton of great night work. I can't wait till next year, summer and late summer. I love those late summer nights when you can go out and shoot the Milky Way as soon as it gets dark. Any other notes here? Oh yeah, we're gonna have an office hours, November 15th. We're gonna be talking about whether or not you actually really need to buy any new gear. Maybe the gear that you have is more than sufficient. You know, I think a lot of people really do make the mistake of trying to improve their photography by buying new stuff. And often, you know, you'd be better served spending a little more time looking at other people's photography, figuring out what inspires you, how maybe they're trying to do what they did, look at the world a little differently, practice a little bit more, maybe upgrade some of your support equipment and accessories to go with the camera gear that you're working with. You know, just working with others. So finding other people to team up with and work, it's time. Time and practice is what really improves your photography. But if you're in a situation where you do need to upgrade gear, we'll talk about the best ways to get rid of that used gear that you have. Where can you get the most easy transaction that's fair and you don't have to worry about coming back at you. And we'll also talk about places to find the fastest track to getting difficult to obtain gear during all this, you know, sort of shortages and supply chain disruption stuff. So we'll be talking about gear, whether you need it, how to get rid of what you have, how to get new stuff, and whether or not you actually do need to. So that's November 15th, Tuesday, 10 a.m. It's a big free get together, Zoom, YouTube Live. You can sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. Again, all the stuff that I've been talking about, I'll put in this video's description. You can just click on the title or show more and you'll find, you know, a chaptered out table of contents where you can rewatch any of what this video has been about with linked time codes. And you can also find links to all the products I'm talking about. It's also always at hudsonhenry.com/ATS links. And using those links helps me out with the content I produce and the training that I do, so I really, really appreciate it. We launched Cuba about a week and a half ago, the Cuba workshop that's happening this April. There's 2 workshops actually due to popular demand, and we're down to 1 slot remaining in the second workshop. So if you're interested in that, run over to hudsonhenry.com, click on training, click on workshops, and you can find more information there. Again, there's only 1 space remaining. We'll be launching more workshops soon. There's a bunch of stuff that's coming for 2023 that's going to be a lot of fun. There's 2 Portland printing workshops. There's a workshop on the Oregon coast, Central Oregon coast, Newport, beautiful stuff there, Thorswell, a bunch of other stuff. We'll be back to Yellowstone. We'll be doing a Moab trip. That's always a perennial favorite. Lots and lots of cool stuff. All right. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope everyone stays safe, stays creative. We'll see you next week.